People waiting to
People waiting to see you.
Oh
Oh,
my
boy,
God.
it is. Yeah, it's so live.
So can we share it to Facebook?
Let me turn on my volume. Can you hear me okay?
Okay, yeah, I could hear you.
Yeah.
So can I share it?
So let me look. Can I share it? Yeah, you can. You can go on mine and share.
Okay, so go to
Okay.
your Facebook
So
page.
go to your Facebook page. If you go to your Facebook page, you can share it to yours. Hey there, Kay. How are you? So the viewers are coming in. You're gonna see this in just a minute.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm so excited.
I'm sorry. Let me check my Twitter. My Twitter failed to start. So hold on. Okay. Here. Okay. I think my Twitter is now. There it goes. So the Twitter is now on.
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool.
I'm doing it
I'm
big
doing it
today.
big today. Hey there, Miss Zena. Hi, Shay. How are you doing? This is not my interview. This is Miss Bridget Gibson interview. I'm gonna let you have the floor. We're just on my connection, but it's your floor, so you have it. I just put you on this to make it easier.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. You
God
are
is
so
so good.
welcome. You do whatever you want to do. It is live.
God is so good.
God is so good.
We are live.
We
I'm,
are
I'm
live.
sharing now.
I'm sharing now.
Oh wow, thank you so
Oh, wow.
much.
Thank you so much. You are so welcome.
Guys, she is
Guys, she is
beautiful. She
beautiful.
is more beautiful, I'm
She's more
telling you.
beautiful. I'm
We
telling you.
see her
Oh,
we see her on
we see her
YouTube and
on YouTube
Instagram,
and
but when she
Instagram.
came on
When she
Zoom, I
came
was
on
just
Zoom,
like,
I
oh
was
my
just like,
God,
oh my
she's
God,
gorgeous.
oh, thank you. We got the same color going on though.
I know we got the same color.
I got the same color.
Oh, Dr.
Oh,
Carmen, I'm
Dr.
so
Carmen.
happy to have you with me on, and especially on this wonderful, beautiful day. It's happy International Women's Day today.
International
And
Women's
so
Day. It
it's
is.
so important
It's
the
so
conversation
important.
we're going to have
The
today.
conversation we're gonna have
And
today.
because we're going to touch
Yes, ma'am. Because
so many,
we're gonna touch
not
so
just
many,
women, but we're going to
but
touch a lot of men's life
we're gonna
also.
touch a lot of
Because
men's
I
life
believe it
also.
starts
Because I
with
believe it starts with
education. There's a
education.
lot of people
There's
out there who are not
a lot of
informed
people out there who are not
and
informed
are not aware of
and
what
are
they're
not aware
living
of
in. And I think
what
it's so
they're living in.
important that
And I
we
think
have
it's so
this
important
discussion.
that we have this
And so,
discussion.
guys, today we have
And so today
Dr.
we have
Carmen Bryant with us.
Dr.
She's a
Carmen Bryant with us.
licensed
She's a
therapist.
licensed
And guys,
therapist.
I had
And
all her
guys, I had
information
all
and I'm
her
all
information
lost now.
and I'm all
But
lost.
she is here with us
But
and
she is
she's
still
going to
with
be
us
able
and
to tell us
she's
everything
going
that
to tell us
is
everything that
involved in.
she is
And
involved in.
she is a
And
narcissistic
she is a
abuse
narcissistic
life coach, and
abuse
she
life
knows
coach. And she
everything
knows
about
everything about
narcissism because she is a
narcissism because
therapist, and she
she
is
is a
going to help
therapist
us
and she is
understand
going to help us
the ins
understand
and outs
the
of being
ins
in a
and outs of being in a
relationship with someone
relationship
who has this
with
disorder.
someone who has
And
this.
my friends are
And
waiting
my
to
friends
hear
are
because
waiting.
I'm a domestic violence advocate.
I'm a domestic
And a
violence
lot of
advocate.
the
And a
questions
lot of
I
the
have
questions I
from
have
my
from
friends is why is it I
my
can't
friends is why
disconnect from this
is
person?
I can't
Why is
connect,
it I keep
disconnect from
going
this.
back into the
Why
same
is I keep
situation?
going back
And it's,
to the
they
same
want to be
situation?
free, but
And they want to
it's
be
like they
free,
can't
but
pull
it's
themselves
like they
out of it.
can't pull
So,
themselves out of it.
Dr. Bryant, can you
So,
please
Dr.
talk to us
Bryant,
today
can you talk
about
to
the
us today
cycle
about the
of domestic
cycle
violence as
of
well as
domestic
narcissistic
violence as
abuse?
well as narcissistic
And
abuse?
what are the
I sure
things
can.
that
And what are the
people are going through
things
that
that
they
people
don't
are going
understand
through that they don't
psychologically?
understand psychologically? Okay. And please forgive me. I was looking down because some people said that the audio is breaking up. So those of you where you're saying that the audio is breaking up, you can go to Facebook as well. I know a lot of the viewers are on YouTube, but you can go to Facebook as well. I'm just going to check the audio on here, Miss Gibson, and I apologize. Let me just check the audio on here.
Okay.
People said the audio is breaking up. So those of you where you're saying that the audio is breaking up, okay, so it's kind of the audio is not so bad.
Yeah,
We'll go on.
okay. It sounds like
So
it's on
I
your
know you.
end.
I know you sent me some questions, so to introduce myself. The first time we meet face to face, and thank you so much for trusting me on your podcast and asking me to do this for you. Um, Happy Women's Day to you. I am a mental health professional licensed. And beginning, I'm looking down at you on the camera. The camera's up here, but you're down on the bottom of my screen, so I'm looking in your face while I'm talking.
Okay.
So please excuse me if it doesn't look like I'm paying attention and looking up here. But I am a licensed mental health counselor here in the state of Washington. I'm also a clinical trauma professional. I hold a doctor's degree. My doctor's degree is a doctor. I have to look up in my own degree to see what kind of doctor I am. I am a doctor of education. I hold a doctor of education in counseling psychology, and the emphasis is on counselor education and supervision. And so my background in the doctor's field is education. I'm an educator at heart, and also in particular domestic violence. For many years, I was married for 20 years. I was with the person for 22 years. So on paper, I was married for 20 years. I wasn't married, but and we were. I sought a divorce after about 18 years, but that's still 22 years of life of being a victim in narcissistic abuse and not knowing what narcissistic abuse was. I began to educate myself while I was in the military about domestic violence because I had a lot of soldiers that were dealing with domestic violence. A lot of them were the females, and I did have some male domestic violence that I used to assist. And for many people that know, when you're dealing with domestic violence, a lot of times you become the greatest advocate for people. You are really trying to resolve your own issue.
I think we're having
Through make it happen for other people.
I think we're having some more
Here,
yeah,
having
breaking up a lot.
okay. The audio is. Let me see. I do not have a microphone here. I do not have a microphone here. Hold on. I do not have a microphone on my computer. Let me see something.
It sounds better when you're closer to it.
You know what? Look down on yours. You see your little microphone pieces?
I do.
So I think my sound and your sound is competing. You just hit mute on yours. Just hit the microphone and mute, and then there just be one sound coming through. And let's see what that sounds like. Okay. So let me see if it sounds better. Does it sound better, you guys? Because I know it's two different sounds coming through the audio at one time. So let me check. On yours, just hit the microphone and mute, and there should be one sound coming through. So let's see. That sounds like. Okay. So let me see if it sounds better. Does it sound better, you guys? Because I know it's two different sounds. So scratchy, but it sounds better. So hopefully this is better. So one of us are muted, so when the other person talk, I'll mute mine. But as I was saying, when I was in the okay, it's better. So they say it's better. So when I was in the military, I became one of the greatest advocates for those people that were in domestic violence. At the time, I was in my master's program, so I didn't know what narcissistic abuse was or narcissistic personality disorder. I didn't understand all that in the beginning. I just knew that what I was going through was very unique because as I began to learn about domestic violence, there was just something. It was something different, and most people know like there's something different though. I see all the I see all the signs and symptoms of domestic violence, but there's something beyond this, and I didn't understand. And then I'm a very analytical person, so while you're in your master's program and you're studying, you begin to study. Say it's not a good thing to study the people in your family. I was watching him, and I was like, there's something different though. There's something different because he always gets away, or he's people are just charmed. It's like mesmerized, like by this individual. He's charming. He's what you call a communal. Now we know the words for communal narcissists. Those are the ones that are very charismatic, very people love them, but I didn't know the terms at the time. And so what happened was when I started a private practice myself, most of the people that came in, now I know most of the people are attached to narcissists. I was giving them information and helping them with domestic violence, but it never seemed like it was enough. It was like you always give them information, but it just wasn't enough. Like there was more to it. And I said to this, it's insidious, and I just can't put my finger on it. I just don't understand what this is. And once I got a divorce, once I was going through a divorce, even the divorce, most people know when they start going through divorce, even the divorce was a game within the courtroom. Everything was a smear campaign. Everything was, I was a bad mother. I wasn't taking care of my child. My child, big as I am, but I'm not feeding her. I'm not taking care of her, and I'm thinking, like, here I am walking around looking like this, but my child looks like a hunchback. The way it was presented was, my child starving to death. My child stinks, and I just didn't understand, like, what is going on. And later on, after I got my divorce, I remember still doing the counseling, and I just started looking up certain terminology. I was not aware of, the popular psychology. The popular psychology is the one that add the terms like gaslighting, gaslighting, trauma bonding, all those words were included, which had been studied before. I just together. And what I started doing, I started watching YouTube videos because I just needed to enhance my skills. I'm like, there's more to this, and I just don't get. And a lot of times when clients came in, it was very similar to my story, and I was like, I don't get it. When I started watching, actually, the first person I started watching was Miss Angie Atkinson. Then after I watched her, it was Little Shaman. Then I started watching, I think it was Les Carter. Then I started watching like people like Quinn Holiday from Associated Direct. I started noticing, because as a therapist, you try to be professional and use clinical terminology to explain domestic violence. You don't try to add the popular cult, popular psychology in there, because it's almost like they discredit you. When you're a professional, you don't use all those other terminology, or you're going to be discredited as a professional. But as I started living, I started thinking to myself, I said, that's exactly what I'm talking about in counseling. However, they add terminology that I had not heard before. The narcissist, that triangulation, the gaslighting, the trauma bonding, the discard, and I was like, that's everything that I talk about anyway, but that's everything that I've been through. And so when I started listening to technology and I started researching it and started implementing it while I was in practice, I realized, like, this is narcissist abuse. And so when I started studying, like, okay, narcissistic personality, as a therapist, you learn that from a treatment perspective. Narcissistic personality, cluster B personality, and you learn that from a treatment perspective. But because of the fact that I was an advocate, and I also, I went to the training with the YWCA to get the 30 hours, I think 30 or 40 hours of domestic violence advocate training, and helping those that are in domestic violence. Then I went to the sexual assault classes to be certified as a sexual assault professional. And while I was in the military, I went and got training on how to be a sexual assault advocate. I got all this training, but it was these pieces that were missing. When I started implementing that verbiage in my counseling session, I realized these people are dealing with narcissist abuse. And when I began to study, like, how insidious they are and the things that they do, I began to understand. I'm like, this narcissistic personality disorder, and this is an individual that is using this, why are they doing this? And so I began to research, and the more information you get. And I know some of the questions you were asking me is, knowing the difference between narcissism, narcissistic personality. You said give a definition of, and I was writing it down. I wrote some notes for myself, but you have narcissism, where you're talking about narcissism, and then you also hear narcissistic personality disorder. They're two different things. When you're talking about narcissism, and I got little notes here, but narcissism, what you're talking about is a description. So when you talk about people have narcissistic behavior, that's very narcissistic. That's very narcissistic behavior, in a description of some features of narcissistic personality disorder. That does not necessarily mean that the person has the disorder. It just means they have some features, some tendencies, and some of those tendencies, when they have narcissism or they have narcissistic behaviors, those tendencies are not persistent, meaning that they may be situational oriented, event oriented. They may be toxic people. They may be immature people. They be, young men, they play the game. Young women play the game. They play this game, and they don't think about other people's emotions, because if they think about other people's emotions, it will bother them. And so a lot of those tendencies make they're self-centered, they're self-absorbed, they're arrogant, prideful, boastful, and sometimes they don't think about other people's feelings. They have a low emotional empathy, but it's not like they have no emotional empathy. They be obnoxious. And they could be power hungry. But it's not a disorder. When you're talking about narcissistic personality disorder, you're talking about a mental health illness, a mental health disorder. And in accordance to the American Psychiatric Association, there's a manual that is used by mental health professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, clinical social workers, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. And so in that manual, it's the NPD, or Narcissistic Personality Disorder, which is a part of the Cluster B disorders. Cluster B disorders are characterized as the dramatic disorders. They're personality disorders. It's a mental disorder, and what it describes is an inflated self of importance, the need for prestige, the need for admiration or attention, feelings of superiority with a disregard of other people's feelings. And behind that mask of superiority, when you hear people saying the mask drop, behind that mask of this superiority or this confidence, really behind that mask is a very fragile and weak self-esteem individual. They don't function well in society. They don't function well with people. You see that with broken relationships, problems at work, problems connecting with people, angry, bitter, and some more. They have this habit of exploiting other people to get their own needs met. So it's this deep desire to have their needs met, not within, like we learn to meet our needs within, but without, meaning that I have to manipulate other people to have a sense of fulfillment, a sense of, and it's only momentary, like drugs. They have this entitled perception about themselves. They feel entitled to your stuff, entitled to anybody else's stuff. If you got it, I want it. And they have a lack of shame or remorse, and exaggerated achievements. And so there is a continuum, of these type of individuals that have this disorder. So the continuum, you have subcategories and categories of some of the subcategories that you may hear about is a vulnerable or covert narcissist. And that definition for that vulnerable or that covert narcissist, really what is being described is a person that, that the covert narcissist or the vulnerable narcissist is one that's a constant victim. They're always a victim. They're very highly sensitive to criticism, because they make themselves look perfect because of the fact that they don't feel perfect. They have a battle going on within. They lack confidence, and usually the vulnerable and covert narcissist, which has associated traits with the cluster B disorders, like borderline personality disorder, histrionic, antisocial personality disorder, and of course narcissistic. But usually the covert or the vulnerable overlap with symptoms of borderline or associated with borderline personality as well. And so you do find people that have borderline that also have narcissistic personality disorder, or vice versa. And then you hear the terms like malignant narcissist. Malignant narcissist overlaps with symptoms of antisocial personality disorder, and they're very vicious. These are ones that you remember, antisocial personality. These are the ones that are sociopaths and psychopaths. And so when you hear malignant, what they're referring to is overlapping in the symptoms of antisocial personality disorder. And then I wrote your questions down. And then the other one was, what is narcissist abuse? So when you're dealing with narcissist abuse, you're dealing with domestic violence. So those people that understand domestic violence, that is your foundation. You understand that, what domestic violence is, that power control. The person has to be in power control. So verbal abuse, physical abuse, that manipulation, the accusations, the criticism, the gaslighting. You hear the gaslighting, and one of the biggest things, and we talked about this on my mentors platform, Clubhouse, was that emotional rape. You have emotional rape, and then you have physical rape. Brain doesn't process the trauma differently. It processes the trauma differently. But when you're dealing with emotional rape, you're dealing with someone that purposely is hijacking your higher emotions like love. And they're forcing you, and that's where that trauma bonding is. They're forcing you to use your love. They're taking advantage of those emotions. And the way that they're intentional, the emotional rate is intentional and systematic act of violence on a person's emotions. So your emotions are being attacked, but it's so subtle that most people don't know what's happening. That's that love bombing. So it's so subtle that you don't even realize that you are being pulled in and you're becoming a captive of your emotions, psychological bondage. Your psyche is being taken hostage, your emotions. And what usually happens is if you remember, is that future faking, that false promises of love and security, the false promises of your future, of how it's going to be. And so, that's what happens when they take your higher emotions hostage. That's where that trauma bonding takes place at. And then I think another one of the questions was, how do narcs choose their targets? Well, how they choose their targets, I call it fishing. They're going to go fish for vulnerabilities in people. And for people that, feel like I'm strong, I'm a strong woman, I'm a strong man. Everybody has vulnerabilities. There is no such thing as a person not having vulnerabilities. All of us have vulnerabilities. When you get into a relationship with someone, it requires you to be vulnerable in the relationship. It's requiring you to have communications, especially in sex. You're going to say some stuff during sex that you ain't never said. You can't even say at a dinner table, because when you are in a relationship with someone, that is the time where you put your guards down and you become vulnerable in order, even with your children, a relationship with your children, you become vulnerable. They know a side of you that nobody else knows. So what you present on the outside is not what the kids know about you, or your lover, or your husband or wife, spouse. The parents know about you. And so these narcissists, because they're on a hunt for supply is meaning that they need to feel empowered. They need a ego boost, and whatever way that they can get that ego boost, they're going to fish for people's vulnerabilities. They're going to watch you for a while. They're going to see how you communicate. The best place to go and fish is right here on social media. They look and see what pictures are up. How do you talk? What do you talk about? A lot of us are cerebral. A lot of us are somatic, and a lot of people are into their looks. A lot of people are more cerebral in their thinking, and so they just watch. What do you talk about? What are your areas of interest? So social media is a good place for narcissists to fish, and they fish. They compliment you to see how you take a compliment. They get into conversations, just basic conversations, just to see if there is an entry point. You're in, they kind of adjust to your environment. They adjust to your likes. They show up in places, just to watch you, to see who your friends are. What they do is, what can I get? What do you have that I want? Is it friends? Is it prestige? Is it your job? Is it money? Is it material things? Each narcissist are looking for something different. They're not all looking for the exact same thing. There's something that they're looking for in their dysfunctional mind. Their perception is that I'm going to take over you. How do you take over a person? You can't take over a person's personality. You can't take over their life. But in their mind, I want what you have. And the longer that they're around you and they begin to see that you're human, that when you wake up, your breath stinks. Simple things that are common knowledge for the average person. Now they begin to despise you because they see you as being perfect. But what they do is they fish. They want to know, okay, can I get in there? And you have learned strong boundaries. It becomes a little harder for them because you're causing too many narcissistic injuries too soon. Some of them will back up. So everyone, every narcissist does not get their prey, but they will, they'll target someone, and then they'll see whether or not there's some vulnerabilities where they can get in there. You see, and I think your question was, they're very intentional. They're very, very intentional. Very highly manipulative individual. They systematically do stuff because they have done it so many times and they see what works. That that Pavlov, the Pavlov theory of the salivating dog. And what happened is they would ring the bell, and they tie the dog up. They ring the bell, and then they bring out food. So the dog began to associate ringing of the bell with bringing of the food. So ringing of the bell caused the dog to salivate because he knew that food was coming out. Well, when they stopped bringing the food, every time they rang the bell, the dog salivated. So a narcissist may not know these terminologies, but they watched. They figured this theory out by watching what was happening. So narcissists watch what happens. They watch, how do you breathe? How do you walk? How do you talk with your hands? How they mirror you. They mirror what you're doing. They how you move your head, and mirroring means that you're trying to lower someone's guards, to lower their guards, to make them comfortable. Something that we use in therapy. We mirror you in order to make you comfortable with us so that we can help you. They take something that is meant for good and they pervert everything. And so, yeah, they're very intentional with what they do. And they may not be able to put the terminology or articulate what they're doing, but they know what they're doing by observing you. That's why they make some of the greatest psychologists and psychiatrists. They already study human behavior, and they're going to use it. They're going to use it. What's the best way but to love bomb a crowd? They get and they talk about things, and they love bomb a crowd to bring them to them. Those that are disordered on social media, they're love bombing the crowd, and it works because a lot of them will argue against you and protect their narcissist. On social media, they're smarter. What do you think? They're intentional what they're doing. I think you asked, like, what are some of the warning signs? Some of the warning signs. I always tell people this. You don't want to, when you're meeting somebody, you're not just, is this a narcissist? Most of us don't do that. When we meet someone, it's not. I think I had someone ask before. You meet people, do you just analyze them all the time? I have that much energy to do that. I don't walk around with I don't walk around like the Terminator, with this computer screen on my face trying to analyze whether people are narcissists. I give you the benefit of the doubt, but I also don't bring you close to my circle because it's common sense that when you are meeting people, let me take that back. That was a very harsh word because I didn't have common sense. So we're not going to say common sense. We don't have common sense or wisdom because I didn't learn that either. So please forgive me. That was the wrong terminology. But when you meet someone, the wisdom behind it is that you don't give a person 100%. You don't just go into it with 100% trust. You have to build rapport with that person. You have to get to know them. You want to see what their character is like. Is their character sturdy? Is their characters stable with time? Are you, like the kids say, are you about what you talk about? Do you want to walk? Do you talk to talk? Let me watch you. With a narcissist, they're going to give you signs. And a lot of times when a person is really hungry, or the kids say thirsty, when a person is really hungry for love, they come out of bad situation, you have already been set up for failure. When you come out of a home that's toxic, or a home where the parents are toxic, or a person is toxic in the family, it's almost like you've already been set up for the spike in volleyball. So you've already been set up because that is your norm. That's all you know. So when you meet people, you give them 100% if they make you feel good. We don't go for feeling, because if you go off a feeling, you're going to be hurt. We don't operate out of feeling. We need to operate out of logic, out of wisdom. When you meet somebody, get to know them, talk to them. Do you notice that their conversation is always geared to themselves? Now, for some people, they enjoy the attention, so it may not be that. Just pay attention, though, that every conversation you have with them is almost like you're not even in the conversation. That's a red flag. Pay attention to that. Everything is about who they know, or who they know, who knows them, who they're connected to, what they have, and you're looking like, okay, am I a part of the conversation? And you're not even part of the conversation. For some people, that's a no-go. Forget that. That's a no-go. I'm not even going to have a conversation. Then pay attention where everything starts moving really fast. All of a sudden, they want you to meet their parents. All of a sudden, they're talking about moving in. All of a sudden, they're talking about marriage. All of a sudden, they're talking about sex. Why are we talking about sex? And this is our first night out for dinner or a movie. Why are we talking about sex? Be aware, ladies, when you are being complimented all the time about your aesthetics. You're so fine. You so pretty. I like your hair. I like the way your body is shaped. That right there is a no-go. Now, some of them are a little more manipulative. They may not say nothing about your body, but they'll pay attention to like how you take compliments, and pay attention that everything that they say is always a compliment. You're smart. You're so pretty. Man, and you just, oh my gosh, I've never met someone like you. And it feels good. You got to recognize it feels good. So it starts feeling real good. You might want to back up a little bit because that's way too much. Why do you keep complimenting me? For some of us, you're like, okay, that's enough. I can get one or two compliments, but you're constantly complimenting me. Pay attention when they're constantly complimenting your aesthetics, because most of us know as we age, we're not going to look like that. Whatever we look like when we're young, when we get older, we're not going to look like that. Your butt ain't going to be sitting up on your back. Your butt going to be dragging on the ground, or breast ain't going to be up underneath your throat. It might be in your lap, but that's not, if they're so focused on your aesthetic, then they're not focused on anything in your mind. Now, if they're cerebral, then they're going to focus a lot on your intellect, and they're pulling from your intellect. But notice, you still got to notice if it's a one-sided conversation. If you start to feel like I'm being interrogated because I'm giving you more information about me than you're giving about yourself. I don't left out there and don't know your middle name, or you know more about me and I don't know nothing about you. And it feels superficial. We can't be so desperate, ladies, that we just accept anything. You keep your standards high. Also pay attention when you start lowering your standards. When you start lowering your standards, like, well, I can work with that, or well, that's a sweet. When you start lowering your standards, pay attention to that. Um, when you're talking to them and they're quick, you got those people that are quick, like salespeople, and you're confused. Like in the conversation, you're confused, and you notice that you disagree, or I don't agree with that, and all of a sudden at the end of the conversation, they have convinced you, they have focused their attention on convincing you to agree with them, and you didn't agree, and you get out of the conversation. It's almost like you regretted even having the conversation. You regret it having, because it's like there was nothing, there was nothing to this conversation. Like everything that I said, now I'm questioning my own beliefs. That's called gaslighting. And they gaslight you not just when they're in the relationship, they'll gaslight you while they're courting you. So there are a lot of things to pay attention to when you feel uncomfortable. And a lot of times people are like, what are the red flags? Some of the red flags are like, that's a red flag. When you're talking to that person, like something don't feel right, but I just can't put my finger on it. Don't dismiss that, or like, oh no, or you start thinking like, well, he ain't got to be tall, he at least he ain't no midget, Now, when you start saying that, you're already lowering your standards, Now, I'm not saying to have false, you don't have a six pack, but you want him to have a six pack. You don't have any money, you broke, you ain't been to school, but you want him to be highly educated. And, when you're wanting something, you got to make sure that you pull in what you are, because you're going to pull what you are. But you got to be careful to demagnetize yourself, because wounded people wound people. Narcissists are wounded people, and they will wound people in order to, it's like they have this insatiable appetite of being fed. And what they do is they suck your emotions dry. So you can get a feeling like something is just not right. Something is just, this doesn't feel right. Those are your red flags. Don't ever turn off your internal alert system. If something don't feel right or something like don't shut, because once you shut that alert system down, it becomes dull, it becomes dull, it becomes dull, until you wonder, how did I get caught up in this cage? How did I get psychologically taken hostage in this situation? And I think the last question you had, I think on here, was, what is trauma bonding? And I know I discussed that previously, is when when a narcissist, a person that has narcissism, they have narcissistic traits. Not all people are narcissists. Some people have very strong narcissistic traits, but they don't have the mental disorder. They don't have the disorder. They still have empathy, emotional empathy. Narcissists don't have emotional empathy. They have cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is being able to recognize emotions. So that's how they abuse, misuse, or pull people in, because they understand, if I do this, this is how you're going to respond or react. If I say this, I know this is how you're going to react. So they have the cognitive, they have the intelligence of knowing cognitive empathy, but the emotional empathy, being able to put my feet in somebody else's shoes and feel your pain, they could, they care less, because it's benefiting them, it's making them feel good. If I can make you cry, it made me feel good. If then when you're crying, I'm able to bring you back up, it makes me feel empowered. And so when you're talking about trauma bonding is almost like Stockholm syndrome. You fall in love with the person that's causing you the most pain. The one that, when your fear has set in, that's how PTSD happens. Post-traumatic is when you are traumatized, when that fear sets in. Stockholm syndrome is it's a coping mechanism in order to stay alive. It's one of those life or death situation. And with a narcissist, you may not be able to distinguish that it's a life and death situation, but you understand that they have the power to hurt you and the power to make you feel better. The power to hurt you, but the power to make you feel good. And so what you'll do is you'll cater to their every need to satisfy. It's like giving a sacrifice to this monster in order to get what you gave me before. What you gave me before was, you made me feel good. I want that. It's like a crack addict. I want that again. So whatever I have to do to get that feeling, I'll do it. So they understand how to elevate that euphoria to make you feel good, and then they'll traumatize you or abuse you, misuse you, and then turn around and soothe you. It's like they put soothing balm on you, like put anesthetic on you, and then they'll stab you again and put some soothing anointing on you. You know, some not anointing, but some what is like lidocaine, put a lidocaine on you so you don't feel it. And so they take you in these emotional ups and downs to a point where you have been conditioned and trained that you are now totally emotionally dependent on this person to make you feel good, just like drugs and alcohol. You know, you are now emotionally dependent on this thing to numb you, make you feel good, give you energy, and you can tell the different types of drugs people use. You can tell you got those that are opiates that make you go to sleep. They don't want to remember. They don't want to feel. They want to go to sleep. You got other ones like stimulants, cocaine, and methamphetamines to boost and give you energy. You know, you got other ones they take cocaine and they take meth and they take heroin to balance them out, so they have this high, but they're not in their reality. You got those psychedelic drugs that like acid that alters your reality. Narcissists do that to people, and most people don't believe that, but the same chemicals that are being released in your brain for bonding, they use it in childbirth. It's I can't even think of it now. I got excited talking. But the same chemicals in your brain, the dopamine, the serotonin, you know, the bonding, it's a bonding chemical what bonds women to babies. It's the same chemical that's released that bonds you to your tormentor. It's the same chemical that's being released to bond you to a drug, causes a drug. There's even in your brain, it's the basal ganglia. I think it's basal ganglia. Your brain actually, whenever you are stressed, your brain is trying to figure out what are you going to do to soothe me? What do you do to make me stop stressing? You know, and what happens is it's like of the algorithms in a computer, and so the brain is trying to figure out what are you going to do to soothe me to make me feel better. So if you eat chocolate when you're stressed, the brain starts registering, oh, so what I'll do is I'll just create a craving so we can get beyond you trying to figure out how to do this. So I'll just make a craving for chocolate, so now you don't have to worry about what to decide. I just make you crave for the chocolate. Well, that's the same chemical as oxytocin. Thank you. Oxytocin, the chemical oxytocin is the bonding chemical, but the brain also will register, you know, this person is causing stress. What happens when you are stressed or when you are tormented or traumatized? What does this person do? So now you're dependent because now your brain starts to give you cravings for the person that's causing you the pain. And so that is that trauma bonding, that Stockholm syndrome. And I think, let me see. And I think that was all the questions you had at the time. So, if you
Wow.
got anything else to say, I'll mute
Wow.
my microphone and you talk.
Wow. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, so do these people, how do they learn all of this stuff? Is it by um, doing it once and see it works and then they just perfect it? You know, all of this trauma bonding, all these different gaslighting and triangulation. Is it they learn that certain things work and they just perfect what they're doing? Oh my gosh.
So you process, you've got trial and error. A lot of us, you know, in therapy, you know, a lot of times it's trial and error. You know, learning a person and then figuring out what works for them and work for them. Military background, and for some people, the military background does not work. There are certain things in my personality that I cannot change, but I'm very straight to the point. We're going to hit this, you know, and I have to be careful with trauma clients. You know, I have to be careful that, you know, a lot of times because I'm gonna go straight in. Let's get to the problem. We only have certain insurances only allot me 45 minutes, and certain insurance only allot me 8, 12. What is your goal? Let's do this. I'm not to learn that from trial and error. Well, if you take that perspective and apply it to a narcissist may have started off over, meaning that they're just hitting people, you know, getting DD charges, getting in jail, just out of control, and they begin to see like, okay, this is not as acceptable. And some of them that actually were physically violent learned that it was easier to verbally abuse you and manipulate you than to put my hands on you. Because if I put my hands on you, I could go to jail. So wait a minute. I'm noticing that you're responding or you're reacting quicker if I do verbal abuse and certain things that I say. And I notice that when I say this, That's what happens. That's why one narcissist told me, he says, I know women. He said, all you got to do is make them feel good about themselves, tell them how pretty they are, or tell them how great the sex is. He said, but I can tell you one thing. Number one, I know I lie. He said, number two, I know that, he says, I know I play the game. He said, I play the game and people believe me. He said, number three, he said, women are so vulnerable. He said, it's so easy to manipulate them. It's so easy to get what I want because I know what they want. He said, the worst sex that I can have is good. So that lets you know he's not involved in sex whatsoever. So the worst sex that he can ever have is good. So to him, he's getting his fix. So it don't matter whether you satisfied or not. He's getting his own fix. So whether you thought he was garbage or you thought he was really good, he's like, the worst sex that I'm gonna get is good. He said, that's it, because it's all about me anyway. So as long as I get a release, I can care less whether you like it or not. And if you say something about me not liking it, he said, then it's too easy for me to talk about you. Too easy for me to scream name. Why you stay with me that long? Because they've been trauma bonded to him. So the thing is they trial and error. Trial and error. They know what to look for. Think about criminals. If you listen to a criminal that talked about how to break. I watched this guy. He is in prison. He was on drugs, but he used to rob houses. And I don't know if it was the investigation of the FBI used him to educate them on what is the mindset. How do you break into homes? What is your mindset coming to home? What he said was, if I go into a community, he said, believe it or not, the neighborhood watch works. He said, the people are going to be watching. If you are somebody that's not in that neighborhood, they're going to watch. He said, I park my car and then I just walk through the neighborhood like I'm just taking a brief walk. He said, and neighborhood watch recognize the fact that I am not a person in the neighborhood. He said, so neighborhood watch works. He said, number two, he said, when I walk by the homes, I look to see whether these homes are anybody in there. He says, I can usually tell that house has some pretty good stuff in it because the yard is very well manicured. The outside is well taken care of. So these are people that have money to invest in the beauty and beautification of their homes. He said, I may do something like knock on the door, pretend like I'm at the wrong house, but I knock on the door. He said, what I do is I look up at their security system. I look to see whether there are wires in there. He said, because there's wires in there, he said, I can cut wires. He said, ones that I have a problem with that are wireless. He said, those are the ones I can't cut into. He said, I usually don't fool with the house. He said, then if I knock, he says, I look at the behavior of the dog. He says, so if the dog is very aggressive and he's big and he hit me, he says, I don't fool with that house. He said, but if it's a dog that's running around looking for the owner, the dog is not aggressive. He's looking for the owner. He says, that house I may work with. He said, I look to see he said, I may look around in the house, see, I watch to see the people watching me walk around the house to see whether they have like it's the things that are on the way connect, the sensors that connect. And then I'll see like if I can look into the house, I can see if anything is in there. If it triggers, if I knock, if someone comes to the door, then I begin to watch to see when people are coming and going. How often are people in that house? So think about it. Now, I just explained all that in the mindset of a burglar who has been charged on a federal level for burglarizing and taking large items. So if a burglar can sit and assess and hone his skills on how to burglarize homes without getting caught, this man has been doing it for years and he was high while he was doing it. So if a burglar can train himself how to do that, why do we underestimate a narcissist on how they train themselves on how to get their prey? Because when they see something that they want, give you a prime example. If you have been with a narcissist and you've been with them for a long time, we have trained them. And so when they leave out of the situationship with us and they go to the new supply, everything you complain about that they didn't do, you never take me anywhere. You never take me on trips. You never do this. I don't have this. You never buy me anything. Everything that they didn't do, they took that and applied it to new supply. Okay, that's what that one wants too. So I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Everything she complained about because you were being punished. So everything you complained about, now they're going to do it for that new supply. So most people assume this narcissist has changed. They haven't changed. They just learned. They didn't learn, but you trained them on the next one so you don't get caught up so quick. You were this. So let me do this different with this one. So the new supply thinks that they're getting something better, and they're not. They're getting someone that's trained different because of the years that you spent training them. Inadvertently, you didn't know, and they're this whole thing, and I can't believe you let go. Oh, you'll find out because you training for the next one. You see?
So, if you've been with a narcissist for a long time, do they have any kind of respect for you because you've allowed them to do all of this stuff to you and you stayed around?
Narcissists have respect for no one. It's all about what I can get from you. And usually they when they start what's the word I'm looking for? Not discard, but when they start devaluing you, they're already showing you what they think about you. And usually devaluation happens when they get a hold of you. When they start dating you and love bombing you and stuff, they've already started devaluing you at the same time because number one, I got you. Now to you, this is wonderful. This is a great relationship. This narcissist seems like he's enamored with me or her, and you are idealized, but in there, they're already devaluing you because you're an object. So they don't have any respect for you anyway. And so they don't have respect for themselves. How can they have respect for anybody else? But they don't have respect for anybody. And even if you're long term with this individual, they don't have any respect for you because they think you're stupid because you stay anyway. It's too easy to manipulate you. So and remember, they always think they're smarter than their prey anyway. So they don't have no respect for you. They already assume that you're ignorant, you're stupid. And where they find out that you're not as dumb as they thought you were is a lot of times when you start beating them, and not beating them meaning you're competing, but when they realize that, dang, I cannot get away with anything in the courtroom. Yeah, because pull yourself out of the situation and now your focus is like, let me focus with my lawyer, people that have coaches and mentors, let me focus. So I don't think you're stupid, but you're starting to realize I'm not as dumb as they say I am. Or I thought I was just as dumb as they made me feel. So no, they don't have respect for anybody. They don't have respect for the law because they think that they're above the law. They don't have respect. The law pertains to who it needs to pertain to. One said the speed limit is 75. He said when you want to pass a car, you can go 100 some miles an hour. Where is that at in the book? Where did that come from? Who said that? You can speed up maybe 5 miles an hour or something like that to pass, but you got to get back and go the speed limit. The speed limit is there for a reason. But they'll come up with their own interpretation of laws, policies, or anything, and it normally doesn't apply to them.
I am I am right now. I'm like, you have given us so much information. Oh my God. I mean, when you broke it down about the burglar, I was just picturing this narcissist as a burglar, how he comes in and steals all your goods, and how he watches to see how he can get in and what he can take. And if he see that you have, security, he's gonna go ahead about his business because he's not gonna put that much work into it. And so what you're doing by educating us is so, so wonderful because you're showing us how to be that smart homeowner who's going to have all the right items in their home to protect themselves. We're going to have that alarm with no wires. We're going to have that dog that's aggressive. And we're going to be ready. And he going to just pass right by us, he or she, because I don't want to say, I don't want to say just women go through this because men go through it also, you know, but women, I think we get it more. I think we get it more. So, Dr. Bryant, you are absolutely wonderful. And you have broke this thing down today where we can get it and we understand it. And you are a blessing. You are an absolute blessing. And I really, really appreciate you. And thank you for hanging in there with me because there's so many people that need to hear what you had to say because people are really tormented and they're struggling and they're trying to figure this thing out. Because when we go through mental anguish, it's nothing like when I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety. And before I found out that's what I had with panic attacks, that was the most horriblest experience of my whole entire life. When your mind is so confused on what's going on, and you have to actually seek help to for someone to say this is what's happening to you, and we have medicine that can calm, get you in a good place because your chemicals are all off. It's all off balance, and we can get you to a good place, but you're going to have to follow direction. And so that's what you're doing for us today. You're saying You need to follow the directions in order for you to be healed. And I'm just so thankful for you. And another thing that people may not know, and I know that you are just so amazing and you don't want to discuss being outside of the clinical sometimes, but you are a wonderful child of God. And you take all of this information, clinical and spiritual, and you combine it together so that everybody can understand. And I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much for being a blessing to us today. Guys, this is an amazing woman. Thank you so much, Dr. Carmen Bryant. Do you have any more you would like to say?
No, ma'am, that's it. I know a lot of people, when I'm on a public forum like this, usually I try to stick to the
Hmm.
experiential,
Yeah, but I heard
for
her in
you,
the I heard you in the
yeah.
spiritual.
So if you come over to like Apostle Sadler's, clubhouse on Mondays, it gives me the liberty and the freedom
Hmm.
to also include the spiritual aspect. And
Hmm.
those of you that are believers, that are Christian, do understand that with you're not dealing with just flesh and blood. You're dealing with spiritual principalities, higher, yeah, higher. You're dealing with principalities and stuff. So a lot of people, whether you are saved, not saved, believe, don't believe, it doesn't matter. One thing that we can all do, there's something very insidious, very demonic behind this, because this is
Hmm.
not normal. This is not what a normal person thinks.
Hmm.
What was it? Why would a person be? Why would they torment? There's something beyond that.
Hmm.
And like I say, when I'm in a clinical setting, the insurance companies do not pay me to use my ministerial gifts to minister to people. But if you put me in an environment, and I have that liberty and that freedom to do it, I do it, because that is a part of the ministry, so they understand that.
And I
But I
really
appreciate you having me on
appreciate
your
it.
platform.
And I want you to share with us how we can contact you. And I think you also have a very special meeting coming up also. So if you can share that information with us, because I'm sure a lot of people would love to follow you.
Well, you can find me on YouTube. Obviously, you guys are on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. A lot of times in the morning, I have time to do long videos, so you can find me on TikTok as well. And let's see, I usually come live on Sundays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is about 11 o'clock Eastern Time. I do have a conference coming up July 30th in Atlanta.
Mhm.
So I'll be in Atlanta at the Marriott Marquis, Atlanta Marriott Marquis on Peachtree Center Avenue.
Mhm.
This is a ticketed event. You can get tickets on overcoming narcissist abuse, one word, not ticket.com.
Mhm.
If you cannot attend in person, you can attend via Zoom, because I will have the entire conference live on Zoom that day. For those of you that want to do VIP, for the VIP guests, you will be able, after the conference is over, you will be escorted by limousine with my special guests that are on the platform that day, to a restaurant of our choice, where you get to sit and talk to us, and dine with us. And it would be a semi-formal, formal event. Those of you that are general admission, you still get to enter with us, because we're going to be right there in session with you. Apostle Sadler's going to tell share with the T on MPD. Ms. Tasha Lilliman, good friend of mine, Bridget Griffin, my big sister, and my big brother, who is Marcus Monroe from New Jersey. Talks about the law of mentality, where he's talking about this new group of men. He used to be a part of it, but it's narcissists training narcissists. A lot of people don't know that that's what they're dealing with. And so these are the people that are going to be there in person, with the exception of my sister, Kathy Gibson. And at the end of the conference, those that usually are accustomed to being on Apostle Sadler's platform on Monday, she's going to have that platform there at the conference, where we're going to be able to interact with the crowd. We'll be able to do question and answers and talk about topics that are specific. And so those of you that are willing to invest in yourself, I'm telling you, you don't want to miss it. For those of you that attended last year in Dallas, I'm going to email them this week to see if they will do a live Zoom call with me for my live on Sunday, so they can talk to you guys about their experience there, in Dallas for this conference. It was phenomenal. It was wonderful. It was my very first live conference. I've done other conferences, but they weren't my conferences. And excuse me, my phone's a ring because I have an appointment right now. But it was a phenomenal experience. It was the first time I did my own conference, and I usually do everybody else's conference. So it was my first conference, and so definitely you guys do not want to miss this. And so hopefully you guys will be able to come. For those that are looking for coaching, you can contact me at Dr. Carmen Bryant at Outlook.com. If you're in the state of Washington, I accept insurances here in the state of Washington. Email me at the same email address. Those that need therapy that are outside the state of Washington, you can go to betterhelp.com/Dr. Carmen, and they will give you a 10% discount. I am going to, I have to get off, and I apologize because I do have a class
Oh
waiting in
no,
my waiting room.
you've been wonderful. Thank you so much. And
You are so
hopefully
welcome.
we'll
Thank you
come
so
back.
much thank you for having me. I know we're trying to get things together, but now you know. Now,
Thank you so much.
thank you so much, Miss Bridget, and it was an honor, and a pleasure
You
meeting you.
too. Love you so much.
Love